So what have you been up to in the last, I don't know, day, week?
Um, Not too much because it's rainy and wintry and gross. Um,
Do you work 40 hours a week?
Not quite, um, but ish.
Yeah,
I work about 40 hours a week, and I work from home, so I'm like you can't really count travel time or anything.
right.
So,
That's
so I don't.
nice. You don't have to spend money on gas.
No, well, we don't even have a car, so um, it's extra nice. I've been
Yeah.
biking, which sucks in the
Okay.
winter. It's awful.
So have you ever seen Instant Hotel, the Netflix show?
No.
Okay. Well, it's a show on
Okay,
Netflix.
got it.
Um, I watched a while ago. Anyway, I guess if you don't know what it is, it doesn't matter that much. Anyway, there's a there's a bunch of contestants and they go stay at each other's like Airbnb, basically.
Okay.
It's kind of like a reality show, whatever. Anyway, there's there's like this professional wakeboarder girl and her brother that are two
Oh,
contestants on the show, and they she is one of the top wakeboarders.
did you know I
I don't
used to
remember her
wakeboard a
name.
lot?
Yes, I did
Okay,
know that.
it's
It's
fun.
partly why I'm telling you this. But
Okay.
anyway, apparently she comes to Claremont, which is where I live, um, pretty often, or apparently she lives here or something.
Hmm.
So we've seen her picture in this little farmer's market store downtown. So it's on the wall. Today we go to the dog park, and I'm bringing Willow in the front gate to go to the
Hmm.
dog park thing, and this girl and this guy are holding back their two dogs to keep from running out of the gate or whatever.
Yeah,
And it's her. It's the girl from the show and like her, I don't know, boyfriend, husband, friend, whatever.
that's cool.
And yeah, it was just a really strange thing to just like you watch the show and then all of a sudden she's right in front of you and your dog is playing with her dog.
Did you
Um,
talk to her at all, or be like, "Hey, I know you from
no,
Netflix"?
no, I
I mean,
didn't
your
want to.
dogs hung out. You could have had a
I know, but I
conversation.
didn't want to bother her or anything. But like immediately, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
that's that girl."
that's cool.
Um, yeah,
I
I
don't think like reality TV
I
person
know,
is
I
the
know,
same thing as like if you ran into Harrison Ford, yeah, he does probably doesn't want to be bothered, but you can probably
I
talk to
know,
a
and
reality
I could
TV
have
person.
talked to her, but it was I don't know. I said something about the dogs, but
Yeah.
yeah, she's very nice. I forget her name. It's like Becky or Becca or something like that.
If
I don't know.
I know anyone like that also has a dog, I never know their name. I know their dog's name, and we never like really talk about each other or to each other. We talk about our dogs like indirectly.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah, that's
how it
pretty much
works.
how it goes.
Yeah. Uh,
So, have you had anything cool like that happen this week or today?
well, I was gonna say when you start talking about Netflix show, I was gonna be like, yeah, I've started watching a crappy Netflix show too. But it doesn't end with anything cool. I don't like meet anyone. I started
Well,
watching
what
Forged in Fire,
I
which
have no idea what that
it's
is.
the worst show. It's so bad. Um, it's well, have you seen the Great British Baking Show?
Yes, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I wasn't about to say it wasn't. It is
Okay,
wonderful.
I was ready
Okay,
to defend.
I wouldn't dare. So it's picture something like the Great British Baking Show, except instead of making like pies and stuff, they make knives, and no one is very charismatic at all, and it's just like this kind of crappy show where they make knives. Um,
Okay, I mean that
but
sounds kind of cool.
it is kind of cool sometimes.
So, how
But
many episodes have you watched? I mean, if you
so many, a lot.
okay,
But in my defense, like I'll put it on and then do something else while it's on. I'm not sitting there enraptured by this show because it's not good.
okay. Speaking of another show, and
Okay.
actually, what I did all day today, besides the dog park, man, today was a very eventful day.
Yeah,
Um,
congrats.
Last night we watched some of the because you mentioned it a while ago. Marie Kondo's I don't know the exact name of the show. Marie Kondo's method of
Yeah,
cleaning and
yeah, the
making
house
things
cleaning
better.
thing.
Yeah, so we watched a
Everyone knows
couple
what you're talking
episodes.
about.
Yes, I know. We watched a couple episodes last night, and so today we spent the entire day, other than the few hours we were at the dog park, uh, tearing apart the house and getting rid of tons of stuff. Um, and that was
So it
great.
worked.
Oh yeah,
I
of
it's
course it
super
works.
silly, but I think her method is perfect.
I don't think it's that silly. I mean, things that you like, you keep. Things that you don't care about, you get rid of. It's pretty simple.
I
It's
mean,
weird that we all forget about this, but
well, I mean, it doesn't always work because like you need a vacuum cleaner. It doesn't matter if it sparks joy or not. Like you
yeah, I
can't
feel
just
no
throw it
joy from
away,
a vacuum cleaner. Yeah,
you know.
yeah. No, I know. You have to. I guess she doesn't really cover necessities,
Right. Like
you know?
I don't like my car, but I'm not going to throw it away.
Well, you don't have a car. You already threw it away.
Technically I do still have one. It's in
Okay, but is that
dad's garage.
right?
Sorry
Okay.
guys. All right,
All
well
right,
should we
that's yeah, that's pretty
enough
much all I
shows. Let's save some
yeah.
shows for next week cuz
Okay.
um all right, so we're talking about obsession, right? Let's get into it.
Yes. Yeah.
And mostly this was sparked by an article that I read a while ago and then I recently like sent to you and you've read. Um,
Yes.
so what are your thoughts? So okay, well, I should say this. The article is called "The Bus Ticket Theory of Genius" by Paul Graham,
I think
right?
you should explain it a little bit first
Okay.
because I can't explain it.
All right. Um, so the basic premise is this: like we have a pretty particular idea about uh, geniuses or people who are, you know, have made these big contributions to the world, physicists and stuff. We picture them as people who are super smart. You know, they have a really high IQ. They're just smart people. And then we picture them as people who work really hard. So you're super smart. You work really hard. You know, accomplish something amazing. You win a Nobel Prize, so on and so forth. So Paul Graham has this article where he argues that there is a third thing that nobody talks about and nobody really even acknowledges is a part of the equation. And he compares it to bus ticket collectors. So there is a group of people who collect bus ticket stubs, like some random ticket stub from some bus line in LA in the 60s or New York City in the 30s and whatever. And they are super jazzed about this bus ticket collecting thing. You know, they know all about them. They know the way they're printed, the way they look, all this stuff. They go hunting for these things. And if you or I tried to learn all the stuff that they know about bus tickets, we could not. Like it is just this massive amount, seemingly bottomless pit of information about bus tickets, right? Like if you or I tried to memorize all that stuff, it would be like just insurmountable.
Because we don't care that much.
Right. We don't care. I don't care about bus tickets. I get one and I use it and I throw it away. Don't care at all. Right. But they do. For whatever reason, they just do. And they invest tons of time and they're super fascinated by these things and they know all about it. So you could say that they are obsessed with bus tickets. And that is not surprising at all. People are obsessed with Hearthstone, with collecting magic cards, with whatever. Like there's all kinds of things that you can, you know, sink countless thousands of hours of time into and learn all about. Like people get obsessed with stuff all the time. So the argument is that level of obsession in the case of a bus ticket collector, it doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of, you know, you wouldn't think of that person as a genius, right? Because they're just doing their thing and they don't care. But if you're obsessed with nature, like the way animals look and behave and blah, 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 like you might be Charles Darwin, who's traveling around the world just doing the same thing, just super fascinated by all the stuff in nature. And he winds up cataloging like vast amounts of different species and winds up kind of coming upon this theory of how they evolved. And you wind up with the theory of evolution. So that's his argument. Not, you know, that a genius is somebody who is, yes, very smart, yes, hardworking, but even the hardworking part might not even be the best way to think about it. Like they are somebody who is obsessed with something and they spend all their time thinking about it and working on it. And they, in some cases, wind up arriving at some theory or discovery that nobody else did because nobody else was really obsessed in the same way. So that's the bus ticket theory of genius.
Yep. Well, when I read it, I was like, "Oh my god, like this well, we have to do an episode on this
Yeah, it's
because
super fascinating.
it it resonates
Hmm.
with me because anything that I've ever achieved has been done almost indirectly as a result of me just not being able to stop obsessing over something. Uh,
Well, we even talked about it on our first show. We were talking about just what it was like to try to learn something over the course of a few years, like be self-taught. And
yeah,
the thing that happened to both of us is that maybe not right away, but after a little while, you become obsessed, and that is what actually carries you through those year or multiple years of learning about something. Is it just becomes the only thing you can think about.
yeah, and that was before I read the article, and then the article is like,
Right.
here, everything you kind of think about this
Yeah.
is what I also think about that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I, but I think a lot of the times where I go wrong is when I forget how much I actually love the subject or love the thing that I'm interested in and just focus on like being good at it. Like, oh, I just want to
Mm.
know how to be good at this. And then I kind of lose sight of the enjoyment of it. And I start, it just becomes work. Like it becomes this
Well,
hard
so
thing to,
how does obsession fit in there for you? Because like I've been thinking about obsession a lot, obviously, because that's what we're talking about, and it's kind of an odd thing because I will become obsessed. Sometimes I'm interested in something and I start investing more time in it, and it turns into an obsession. Like interest is how it starts, and it kind of blossoms into a full blown consuming my life obsession, and that's straightforward enough. But other times it's like kind of, I don't know, like I get obsessed with things that I wasn't expecting to, or there's some, I don't know, like I have these IKEA lights, right? Like you can, well, you
are you
can't tell by the
obsessed
way
with
they look.
IKEA lights?
Well, kind of, because I found them at IKEA and I bought them, and they're like the smart lights, right? So they're networked, they communicate over, they call it a Zigbee protocol. And there's like this little base station that can talk to the lights, and they can also talk to like your local network. So I discovered that IKEA has these and they're cheap. And so I bought a ton of them and I started putting them everywhere. And then I discovered something called OpenHab, which is some software you can run on a computer at home, like on a server, and it can like talk to all the lights, and it can talk to, or it can like get information from the local weather. And so you can have your lights like change color temperature as the sun like comes up and goes down, and then if it's rainy outside you can like have, one turn purple and whatever. Like
Can you demonstrate this real quick, or is that
I
too much work?
can like turn
Just
them
kind of
off and
flip.
on from my phone, I guess. um
Can you make them purple?
I'm gonna look really creepy.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
I should put it back because I look
Wait, how
bad.
many of those lights do you have? And
A
is it
lot, so many, they're everywhere.
okay? Oh, that's cool. Mine
And
just goes light to dark, but okay,
right,
continue.
so
Sorry.
color, point is, I'm shopping in IKEA for, I don't, probably meatballs. I don't know why I was there. And then I'm like, I find these lights and I'm like, whoa, you can get like color temperature changing smart lights for like $8 a piece. And so I'm like, neat. So I bought some and I plug them in. And then before I know it, it's like 4 a.m. and I'm trying to set up a server at home to control the lights and figure out how to get it to do, I don't know, all kinds of random things. And I can't stop like programming different scenes. And when you press play on the Apple TV, like it dims the lights that reflect on the TV and turns up this one. And like the whole house
Yeah,
is
I would
wired up
call
for,
that being a bit obsessed. Yeah.
but right. Oh, I would definitely call that being
Yeah.
obsessed. But the point is, I went to IKEA because I was hungry. I did not plan on becoming obsessed with light bulbs of all things. It just happened. And I just rode that wave for days and days. It's like it just hit me, this sudden complete obsession, fascination with freaking light bulbs.
Right. Yeah, which is see that's very interesting to me because you didn't set out to achieve perfect lighting in your room, right? I mean, maybe
Right.
you kind of did, but you just kind of like loved the process and saw all the possibilities that you could achieve with all of these things.
Yeah.
Um, what was it exactly that like you were getting satisfied from in doing this?
Well,
Like, was it the lighting in your room, or was it, like, how the lights work? Or I guess it maybe everything.
I think that's a extremely good question. And if I could really answer that, then that would be great. Like you could unlock a lot of things if you knew what truly caused you to be obsessed with one thing and something else. Like it would have been awesome if I could have been obsessed with like a very relevant and valuable problem to the world instead of getting obsessed with light bulbs, and that's just what happened. But
They look really good though.
thanks. Thanks. I wish I could take you on a tour of the house and show you
You could,
how
but
good a
okay,
job
we'll
I
save
did.
that for a different
Yeah.
time.
Um, so part of the obsession has to do with this idea that I'm chasing something. Like if I don't know, if you found like a cool lamp and you brought it home and you're like, "Oh, that's a cool lamp. I like it. It looks good on this desk right here." That's it. That like there's nothing else to think about. Maybe it just makes you happy when you walk in the room, but like it's just a cool lamp. You muted yourself.
I said it sparks joy.
Yes, it sparks joy.
Yeah.
Exactly. I thought that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's it. Like there's nowhere else to go with it. It maybe just makes me happy, but I'm not obsessed with it. I mean, maybe some people get obsessed with like a single inanimate object, but that's probably like a problem. But with the lights, like with the idea that I could make something, that I could like change my environment and have it do all these cool things, like there is this it might be really hazy. Like there's not even this clear picture in my head of what I even want. I just know that I want something and I'm
Right.
chasing it. Like I'm after this idea of this house that like the lights come on in the morning with the sun in the evening and it gets warm and it helps me sleep better because it's more orange light instead of blue. All that stuff. Like those are all exciting ideas to me and I want this house set up this way. So there's
Right,
something
so
I'm after.
Replace the lights with animals, and boom, you look back and you're Darwin.
Right,
you know?
exactly. I could have been Darwin, except for me, it was Ikea lights.
Right.
To be
So
fair, this obsession didn't last that long, so I don't think I would have gotten that far with animals.
Yeah. Okay. A little less profound and
Right.
earth changing, but
Yeah.
but still, the obsession part is very similar, I think.
Yeah. I don't have a smaller scale, but it's there. Like I'm obsessed or was obsessed.
Yeah.
So okay, the question is, well, let me start with this. So I started reading a book, a biography of Albert Einstein by Walter Isaacson, and I'm not that far, but it's actually really fascinating. Einstein is obviously like the quintessential genius. There's some comedian that has like a whole bit on him where like we actually just use Einstein to make fun of people for being stupid. You're just like, oh, nice going, Einstein, and that's what Einstein's name is for now.
That's sad.
I know. Anyway, so Einstein was pretty okay. So you're familiar with his theory of special relativity, right? Like this idea that time and space are not fixed and it's relative to you, and like as you go faster, time slows down and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So you would assume, or most people would, that he, genius guy, he, was buckled down and like solved through math and whatever, he like solved these problems in the universe and came up with this amazing theory. That's not really how it worked with him. So 10 years before he even like published this paper, he was thinking about it, just thinking. And he did this thought experiment where he pictured himself traveling super fast, like the speed of light, alongside a beam of light, right? Like he looks over and here's this light beam. And light is kind of a wave, right? Like it's supposed to, move through time and space. But if you looked over, it would just be like a standing wave right next to you. Like you're moving right alongside it. And Maxwell's equations, which are like this equations describing the way light works, like don't allow for that. Like light can't be a standing wave. And I won't pretend that I understand how Maxwell's equations work, but like that's Einstein did. And so he's thinking about this and he's like, this doesn't make sense. This little thought experiment in my head, Maxwell's equations don't work anymore. And if I thought of that, if I was thinking through this and I was like, man, it wouldn't make sense if you were going right alongside a light beam, I'd be like, oh, well, I won't worry about
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And, or I might assume that like I didn't understand it correctly or whatever. Einstein did not. It actually drove him nuts. Like he talks about like having shaky hands, being confused, like wandering around in a daze. This idea, this thing that like he could not figure out in his head, it like drove him crazy. And he spent years and years, like it was 10 years later that he published this paper. You know, he spent these years working on this. Like this problem, this little thought experiment that he couldn't resolve, it like burrowed into his mind to where he could not let it go. Like he was completely obsessed with this problem. And that obsession is what led him into coming up with this insane theory that like time and space are not fixed and like everything we think about the way the universe works is completely wrong. I mean, it
So
would,
was did he like his obsession with this?
yeah.
Was it trying to figure out a way in which it would work? Like you could travel next to light? Like what was the obsession exactly?
Yeah,
Other than just trying to picture it.
I think that he had this thought that he could not resolve. Like this, he has this feeling or understanding that this doesn't make sense. This basic law of the universe doesn't make sense. And
Yeah.
he didn't know why, but he knew it was wrong.
So he's trying to figure out why that's wrong.
I think so. I mean, he doesn't
Yeah.
exactly say, and again, I could probably do to read a little more of the book, but he doesn't exactly say like what it was about that. He has this thought and he cannot let it go. He knows that something is wrong. And that is what drove him into coming up with this crazy theory. I mean, and the theory was crazy. Like it is as if you were like, "Hey, I've been thinking about stuff and I figured out how to travel backwards in time." Like that's the level of nutty that it was, and it did turn out to be correct, but like that's what got him there, was this obsession with this thought that he couldn't resolve. So to me, that absolutely supports this idea that the genius of Albert Einstein was as much driven by just an obsession as anything else.
Yeah. So if say you wanted to learn guitar, okay? Like you had never touched a guitar, don't know anything about music, and you're like, I don't know, the thought hits you of like, I want to be a guitarist.
Yeah.
Now, in order to solve that problem of you becoming a guitarist, you might start wondering about it and become like obsessed with it. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
How do you make sure that obsession leads to the end goal of you being a guitarist?
Well, so we might be kind of thinking about different things in a way. Like Einstein, you know, he has this problem, and it didn't sound like he was like, oh man, I'm pretty sure if I solve this problem, I'll be a famous scientist and, you know, people will love me forever. I think he was like, this problem is driving me nuts and I can't let it go. I don't know that he thought that it would lead him somewhere or not. But regardless, like he was obsessed with it because he was obsessed with it. Like he knew something was off and he wanted to know why. For us, I mean, I'm not really planning on solving a problem on the scale of like special relativity. But I don't know that you even could, right? Like if you want to learn guitar, I think obsession is part of it, but it's not the same scale. And I think I get what you're saying. Like, how do you kind of steer that in a way that kind of serves your purposes? Like you're trying to manipulate an obsession to get you
Well,
somewhere, right?
yeah, maybe that doesn't make sense. But you know, why would you manipulate an obsession? The I don't know. I guess the obsession just drives itself. You don't.
Well, I mean, like if you never set out to play guitar, you're never going to be obsessed with guitar playing, right? Like you are kind of choosing to expose yourself or set yourself up for an obsession in some area, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you played piano, then maybe you get obsessed with piano, but it's not going to be guitar. Like it, you know, you're kind of lining things up. for this to
Yeah.
happen. Um, I guess I don't know. I think it's hard to tame obsession and make it do what you want, but at least
Yeah.
kind of pointing it in the right direction is the first step.
Yeah, well, maybe the thing you shouldn't do is try to see the ending of it. Like an obsession is just like it doesn't see an ending. It's just
Right.
you being obsessed with things and being interested
Right.
in solving whatever's in front of you. Like you don't care what the end product is. You don't care what it does exactly.
Yeah.
You're just following this thing that you're really interested in.
I think that's probably true. I think obsession is, like I said, with the IKEA lights or whatever. I mean, I got obsessed with it. I was excited. I wanted something, but it's not like once I got the lights working, I'm like, cool, I did it. It's over now. I've accomplished this thing that I've been chasing. It was more like, I don't know. I pursued that obsession up to some point until I eventually kind of got bored or less obsessed, and I started getting obsessed with something else. I mean, it wasn't like crossing a finish line and having this big celebration or something. It was more like I'm chasing an obsession for obsession's sake.
Did it feel like really hard work?
No, not at all. I mean, it like
It was
kept me
really
up, and I'm
fun,
like,
right?
what's that?
Yeah. It was really fun,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I don't even know if fun is the right word, because I sometimes I like get stuck on a problem. Like even with the light stuff. I don't know why that's going to be the prime example for me.
I love it, so
Okay, all
keep
right.
going with it.
I've done cooler stuff than light bulbs, but well,
Now the
that's
lights
fine.
are the coolest thing
All
you've
right, all
done.
right, all right. We'll go with the lights. So like, I'm trying to set up OpenHab, which is this server thing, and it's kind of janky and it doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. And so it'll be middle of the night, 3 a.m. The lights are on bright because I can't figure out how to make them work. And I'm like trying to chase down some last little problem, and I've been beating my head against the wall for hours, like how to get this thing working right. I can't get the timer to come on correctly, or if I change the color temperature, it doesn't work for the lights that are off. Whatever it is, I'm mad. I'm not happy. It's not fun. I'm just I just can't stop. Like whatever it is, I can't stop. I have to figure out how to fix that thing. So I don't think
Yeah.
fun's the right word. I mean, sometimes it is fun, but it's a drive that I just can't let go of.
It's powerful, right? Like,
It's super powerful. It almost
yeah,
feels like I'm a little bit helpless. Like I want to go to bed. I want to do something else. I don't care that much at the end of the day. Or at least I think I don't, but actually no, I
right.
do. I can't let it go.
Yeah. No, I have experienced this exact
Yeah.
same thing. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's talk about you for a minute. How do you think, I mean, you are a little different, right? Because I'm somebody who kind of jumps around with a lot of different things. I think you've been more focused on like art for a long time now, right?
Well, there's one word for a lot of different things.
Yes.
In the art, well, I do bounce around all the time.
Okay.
I bounce around from drawing to painting, from tonal organization to figure drawing to being obsessed with just materials, like different artists. I don't know, all sorts of things. So there's all different like categories within the art world. I
Yeah.
just kind of call it art. Uh, I don't know. It's just a blanket term, but there are so many different things within the art world.
Okay.
Um,
That's fair.
so what do I get obsessed with?
Well, I mean, if we're kind of sticking with this theory that obsession is the main driver behind not just great accomplishment like for somebody like Einstein, but even smaller scale stuff, like it's just if you want to be a great artist, then obsession is the driver. Like how does that
I
fit in with the like your trajectory or the different projects you've worked on? You have a job where you have to go in every day. Like is
well,
obsession still a driver for you, or what?
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And sometimes it takes a little bit to kick in, you know?
Yeah.
Like, say I have a job designing a hotel or something, okay? At first, I'm like, I'll get the prompt or whatever, and it's like, I don't really want to do this. Like, I don't feel like doing this. I'm not
Yeah.
really feeling it. I don't really know how to do that. Whatever. And then I start learning about it. Um, say it's like an Egyptian hotel, right? And I don't know anything about Egyptian architecture or anything.
Right.
So I start researching it because I have to have a design ready. And instantly I start running into these things that are interesting. I'm like, "Oh, that actually looks really cool, and this looks cool. What if we combine the 2? What if we did that?" And then it just, like, sets me off, and then I kinda just obsess about it, and I start reading about this type of architecture, that type of architecture, and then I start looking at artists and how they've represented Egyptian architecture before, and I don't know, Egyptian history all of a sudden becomes really, really interesting to me, and I just start obsessing over it. And how can I apply this to the problem at hand? And how can I technically do it? How can I be historically representative? What are the things in history that are interesting to me? It never ends. And I start looking at different art that's been done before. I look at different artists that have worked on these things, and it just becomes really, really interesting, and I become obsessed with it. And I also have a deadline, and so this all fits into a specific amount of time, and so I have to pace myself. I'm working on my own piece, that is also following along with my obsession, and it all has to be finished at a certain time. um, but that's kind of how it works for me.
So you kind of are like controlling the obsession. Like you start on a project and then you eventually get that ball rolling to where
I have to, but there are so many things I learn when I do a piece like that, that don't end up in the final product. But I don't always know exactly what's going to
right.
stick, so I just kind of follow everything I'm really interested in, and if there's something that I think can work, I take a mental note and I try to work that into the design. If it doesn't work, whatever. But the knowledge is still useful to me. Um,
So I mean, I assume you enjoy some aspect of that like obsessive
as
process?
When I start getting into it, it usually takes a little bit, but once I start doing the research and I start feeling like I know a little bit, like if say I had to design a car, like I don't know anything about cars. I've never actually had to design a car, but if I had to design a car, I would imagine that I would not like it at first. But when I started getting past the point of where I felt like I knew something about them, like I had
Yeah.
something to offer to the car world, which I do not right now. And
Right.
it even seems silly. But if I started researching it and I got to the point where I felt like I had something to offer, then it gets really interesting because I don't feel inferior anymore. I feel like, I belong there. I have something for them. And I think that's when it becomes really interesting
Yeah.
for
That's an
me.
interesting point because that kind of clicks with me a little bit. I think if I start on something new, a lot of times you get that, blank sheet kind of anxiety, and it doesn't even have to be like you're writing something or painting something, but almost any project. If you don't know where to start and you don't even know like what questions to ask or what to type into
Yeah,
Google, you're just like this big hazy mess of stuff you don't even know where to get going with. And like that is super unpleasant to me. Like
right.
you just feel helpless and like you're flailing around trying to find something. But to me, like with the light thing again, because that's going to be the only thing I talk about today.
I love the lights.
Yeah.
Keep going.
It's like once you start to feel a little bit of power where you're like, "Oh, I can do this." Like I can't do much, but I can type something into my
Yes.
computer and it makes the light bulb go off. Like that, I know how to do that now. And I know that
Yes.
I could take this and like learn how to do more and make really cool stuff happen. Like
Right.
there's that feeling of like you're gaining power in the world and like you start to
Absolutely.
use it. Yeah.
So I'm using Egyptian architecture as a, a substitution for something that I am actually recently
Yeah.
working on. But say I got the prompt, and this is exactly how it went, but something completely different.
Yeah, yeah. The
I
names are
got the
changed
prompt
to
of like,
protect innocent, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, but it's the exact same thing. So I get the prompt of, you have to design this scene with a pyramid in the middle, you know.
Yeah.
It's an Egyptian world, you gotta include a pyramid in the middle and maybe a sphinx in the background, right? Now, I sit down to go design this, and I don't know anything about anything Egyptian. All I know is that pyramids are a giant triangle, right? And a sphinx is a cat lady,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Is it a cat
Um,
lady? I didn't know it was a lady.
right?
I don't know.
Okay, well, maybe I think that's right.
I
Yeah, it's
guess.
a cat with a see, I don't know anything about it. And so I try drawing something because you just have to start drawing to see what you know.
Yeah.
So I draw a giant triangle and maybe a cat lady in the background, and it looks awful and it looks stupid. And I know it just looks elementary, like a kid drew it.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm like, okay, I have to solve this problem. I have a certain amount of time and I got to solve it. So you start researching, and then you realize that pyramids are actually made out of this and they were built this way, or we think they were built this way, or some pyramids look like this and they were made for this reason. And you get super into it. And then you get the tipping point of like, oh, now I kind of know stuff about
Hmm.
pyramids. Whereas, the me before, which is like a lot of other people don't know that much. Um, I forget why I started talking about this, and I
No,
feel like I
I
already said
mean
it, but
because of that
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
momentum
The
that you start
authority.
like
Yeah, once you get to a point of like authority, and it's not like a lot. It's not like I know a ton about whatever subject,
right.
but you do know something, and you combine it with your existing knowledge, and all of a sudden you do have something to offer because the knowledge I have on lighting or perspective or the way to
Yeah.
paint things, like you combine it with some knowledge that you just learned, and then all of a sudden you have something new, and that's really exciting.
Yeah. To me, a big part of like what what drives me forward is knowing what my next objective is, or like having, like you said, like you draw a pyramid and it looks stupid because you don't know how yet, but once you do it you're like, okay, what's wrong? And you go look it up, you're like, oh, I need to make it look like this, like that's the next
Right.
thing to do. I think about like video games, and obviously it's very easy to get obsessed with video games. I mean, they're kind of built for that, but it's worth thinking about why. Like most of the time, a video game, like I'm playing Doom Eternal right now, which is amazing to anybody who's looking for a new game. um and I would
Doom
say
Eternal?
Doom Eternal, yeah, yeah. So you've seen Doom, like the classic Doom where you walk around and shoot demons.
Yes. Keep talking.
I hope so.
I
Anyway,
just wanna see pictures.
okay, well, so they redid, like they made a new AAA version of Doom in 2016, which I bought and played, and I didn't think I would like it. Like I don't really like shooters that much, but it's just so well done and so good, that I loved it. And then this is like I think it's a 2020 game. It's like the next one. You're the Hell Walker, and you walk around, chainsawing demons in half and stuff. But the point is,
Sounds fun.
it's great. The point is, it's very easy for me to get obsessed with that because the game, or most games, are designed in a way where, like, even though they're really hard, like I'm playing on Nightmare and I die 40 times in one spot until I finally get through, but they give you progression. So there is this idea that at the start, like, I'm going to be stronger by the end, which is kind of dumb in a way because like you get a better gun and then they just make the enemies harder, so it's not really, you're no better off, but you still just have this idea that like I'm gonna get more powerful by the end. That's just really appealing. And then there's always a very, very clear next objective. Like if you get into a game where you're wandering around for an hour, like unsure of what to do, that is not fun. Like that does not make you want to keep playing. But if you know that like I have to get past this giant demon boss guy, and the way I do it is to kill him, then like that's what you got to do, and you're like, the way forward is always right in front of you. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, I guess, like when you're starting a project, or when you're trying to get to that state where you are invested and obsessed in something. If you're just kind of like, if you just don't know how to go forward, that's super discouraging and frustrating. Like you're just kind of flailing around not knowing what to do. If you can kind of lay things out to where you figure out what the next step is, and
Yeah.
like how to move towards this goal that's in your head, like that is part of how obsession works, at least for me, to where I want it because I know that I can do this, and then I will become more powerful, whatever that means, and then I can do the next thing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That yeah, that's exactly the way it works for me. I'm usually sometimes it takes longer to get to that point. Um,
Yes. Well, sometimes it is hard to figure out like taxes. I hate
ugh,
them. They're awful. And the reason is because it perfectly encapsulates that idea of me going, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like, take the sum of line 34 and line 37 on worksheet 7A. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't know how to do that. I don't know if this applies to me. I hate this. I hate everything
I
about it.
even hate it as a metaphor.
I know. That's how bad
Because
it is.
yeah,
I
for
agree.
me, there is no reward. I just have to
Right.
pay money.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. It captures exactly what does not work about getting obsessed because there's no
yeah.
payoff. It's the opposite. You have to pay them, and like you're not achieving anything, and then it's not a clear path forward.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is say I get the prompt or whatever, and I have a deadline, and I know that I have to get to the point where I'm obsessed with it. Otherwise, it'll be a bad picture, right?
Okay.
I have I have to get to that point, and it's like sometimes it'll take. I usually only have maybe a week to work on a piece, sometimes longer, sometimes only 2 or 3 days. But so there's like this frantic searching at the beginning to find something that will make me obsessed with it. Um, and maybe it starts with me obsessing about why I'm not interested in it.
Right.
Um, and so maybe it's just frantic panic or something. But I think it's interesting because I'm sitting there searching for the thing that will make me really interested in it. Something familiar almost. Like I'm searching for the thing that is familiar that I can feel comfortable researching or I can feel comfortable exploring. Um,
So you kind of know when you're obsessed and when you're not, right? Like you're kind of
y-
and you're
yeah,
trying to do that from the outset. Like you're looking for
I'm
the
looking for that jumping off point of like,
right.
and I know it when I find it. It's like I'll see that thing and I'm like, yes, that's the aspect of this problem that I'm interested in.
Okay.
And as soon as I find it, it's like I got it and I know how to move forward. As soon as it's something that I recognize, then I can take it and move it forward.
So you
Um,
actually are pretty practiced in the art of like getting obsessed with something and
yeah,
then going to the next thing.
when I first started, and I'm talking about my full-time job. So these are
Yeah, yeah.
real problems that I have to solve. And so when I first started, it was like, if I can't solve this, do I lose my job? like can I not do this? Like, my entire life depended on it.
Yeah.
Money and everything was dependent on the problems that I could solve. And so at the beginning, it's like I'd get a problem and I had to solve it. And you don't know if you can solve it. That was the thing. It's like I didn't know if I was capable of solving these types of problems.
That's kind of
Um,
scary.
and so you're frantically
Mhm.
obsessing about how to get it to a point where you know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Um, and I've done it so much to where now I'll get a problem, and even if I don't know the solution to it, I know that I will come up with a solution to it at some point within the next day or two. I will come up with a solution. I, I mean, I'll still feel unsure sometimes, but I always figure it out, which is really weird. Um, but I've come to realize that not knowing is all part of the
Yeah.
process. That not knowing if you really can do this, it's terrifying. But I've
Mhm.
also come to realize that it happens every single time, and I just have to get through it
Yeah.
to get to that next stage where I suddenly feel comfortable and I find my jumping off point to
Right.
where I can run with it.
So it's very much like a singular inflection point for you to
Yeah.
where okay. So, okay, how does it change or does it change if you're working on something on your own? Like you just have some project you want to do, nobody's telling you you have to get it done. How does that work?
It varies a lot. It is
Okay.
totally different, and the reason it's different is because if I'm doing it on my own, um, I assume you don't mean freelance. If it's a freelance thing, I it's very similar because I have deadlines and I have to get it
I
done.
think I mean like on your own. Like you are just painting something that you are not intending to sell or whatever. Like it's just your own
Yeah.
thing.
If it's on my own, well, it depends. If it's like a practice thing, I normally have like set deadlines that I try to stay to. So like I'm working through two books. You can actually, I think, yeah, there's two books on my drawing table. I don't know if you can see them,
Hold on. Yeah.
but and then the one in the middle is just a drawing pad. But I'm working through those two books, trying to go, page at a time and go through them. And I did section it out to where they're kind of due at this point or whatever. I've totally screwed that up, but that doesn't matter that much. So I try to set internal deadlines, and for the practice stuff like that, um, it's not as high pressure, and so I'm not dealing too much with, can I figure this out? I have to frantically search for it. It's like, oh yeah, I'll work on it today, and whatever I get done, I get done. When I'm working on like a piece that's like mine and I want to, I don't know, do something with it and it's like a finished piece, basically because I don't have that panic, that looming deadline
Mm-hmm.
forcing me to finish it, it pretty much never gets done. Um, I'll just I'll just say it. Um, you commissioned me to do a bunch of paintings like what 6 years ago, and I did
Yeah.
one of them.
There's supposed to be
With
9. So we
Yeah,
got your
9
one.
paintings, and I did one about 6 years ago. And
Well, one you
they
did, and then you lit it on fire.
yeah, so I did the second one, and then I didn't like it, and so I lit it on fire and destroyed it. And then I started it again, and then I lost that one. After that, I think I just gave up. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is the the deadlines, the environment is extremely important to pulling you through those times where you don't know the answer. Like if I had to get you a painting within 1 week from today, I would figure out how to get you that painting.
Yeah.
Like if I would lose my job and lose my reputation and like my house, everything ended if I didn't finish this painting in
Mm-hmm.
1 week, I would figure that out.
So I
Because
have to like blackmail you somehow or do some
yeah,
horrible thing.
that's your
Okay.
solution. Or offer
Okay.
me a lot of money.
Well,
That also works.
okay. Well,
But
I'll go
but
with the
I
blackmail
realized
then.
that because it's like I'm not strong enough to self-impose these things on myself.
Yeah.
Like I'll try, I will mark them off on the calendar and try to stick to them, but I know in the back of my head I can always push it further.
Yeah.
I don't like to do that, but I do that. At work, I don't have a choice. I have to turn something in, and it makes a big difference. A big difference. Um,
Yeah. So what I have found in me, and this sounds similar, is that with when I get obsessed with some random thing like the lights, there is this kind of curve of things ramping up to where I start to feel that kind of powerful feeling of learning how to do stuff and feeling I can do things and having in my head like these really cool things that I'm gonna do once I get there. Like there's this
yeah,
kind of curve to where that gets really exciting and it ramps up to some peak, to where I'm doing stuff and I'm setting things up and I'm really riding the wave. But then inevitably it begins to fall off where I'm not getting a return as quickly, or there's just becoming fewer and fewer things that I do know how to do, or I've done most of the cool things and there's only a few left and they're kind of hard. Um,
right.
a lot of times I've found that if I'm working on a project, the problems that wind up getting pushed to the end are really the ugly ones to solve that I never wanted to solve in the first place, and like that's why they've been left to the end.
Right.
Um, and so you wind up like all those things kind of work together to where the last 20% or something is just kind of ugly, where it's stuff that I don't really know how to do, or maybe I did something really cool and like I was in my head thinking like, oh, I'll share this, I'll put up a GitHub repository online and everybody else can use this and see how awesome I am. But then when it comes time to like actually getting stuff out there and thinking about how to make it work on other people's computers and deal with like the support stuff, like that's the messy things that I don't have that same feeling about. And so when it comes time to like do that final stuff, I just don't want to. Like everything that I've been relying on before, that like obsessive, powerful, exciting part of the project, like that's over with, and that stuff doesn't get done. And I think that like if I knew how to make sure that you always did 100% of the project and you didn't stop at 80%, then like my life would be different. And I don't. But part of it is acknowledging that the obsession part of a project or anything you're into, it can carry you through a lot of stuff, but like there are certain things that it doesn't work for, at least for me. Like it runs out of gas, and then you have to rely on some other things to deal with those loose issues that like your obsessive nature is not going to make you do.
See, I'm smiling while you say this because that is exactly exactly what happens when I'm working on
Yeah.
a painting or a piece for a project, because I will, and 80% is a good percentage. Say this last painting, which is not what I'm about to talk about, but is extremely similar. I have a pyramid in the middle and the Sphinx in the background. And that pyramid, because of all my research and everything, has become so important and so interesting to me. I've done all this research and I spend all my time on the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And then I spend a lot of time on the Sphinx because I've also done research on that. But then you realize, oh, I have to throw in like palm trees and like people and like,
Mm-hmm.
some rocks in the foreground and some stuff like that. And you don't even like, you're like, oh, I have to throw it in there. And it just starts like covering up the things you're really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to. And the deadline gets closer and you just start like throwing all these things in there and you have
Yeah.
to do it, but you don't want to do it because that's not what you're interested in.
Right.
And then you stand back and you turn in the piece and you look at it and you're like, ah, like this last 20% just covered up the stuff that's really cool. um and it's so visual when you're working in like art or something, that the things that you were obsessed with and then were really interested in turn out really good, right? And
Yeah.
all the other things that you have to include and you don't really want to don't look good. And
Yeah.
they never do. If you're not interested in it, it will not look good. And just like you with programming or whatever, if you're not interested in it, it's not going to be groundbreaking. It's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be great. Um, I don't know. It just, when you were saying that, it just sounded so familiar.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I think you need, well, okay, even with the lights, right? Like I set the whole house up, all the lights work, and then we moved, and so all the lights are in different places, and none of it's set up correctly. And if it were up to me alone, that's how it would be forever. They would the whole thing would be completely messed up, and we would go back to just flipping switches off and on because the obsession wave is 100% over, and I don't want to do that anymore. But Sam was like, "Hey, we need the lights to work because that's like an important thing about living. We need lights." And I'm like,
yeah.
"Okay, I guess I'll fix them." And I had to like force myself to sit down and figure it out and reassign them and reprogram it and all that stuff. And it wasn't very fun, but I did it. But the point is, like, my obsessive nature would not have made me do that ever. It was external pressure from somebody else, like, "Hey, fix the freaking lights," where I did.
Yeah.
So I I think if you want to do projects or use kind of the obsessive nature of your brain to do anything really, you have to know that there are certain parts of it that like the obsession doesn't cover. And I think you kind of have to line things up. But I mean, willpower, setting deadlines for yourself, like that can be really good. I think if you can get other people involved where you have a little bit of that like social pressure of, hey, you said you were going to do this by then and you're not, or
Yep.
even better, like, hey, have you finished the thing you're supposed to do because I need it for the thing that I'm supposed to do. Like if you feel like somebody's relying on you and you have to be like, you have to
Yeah.
get your thing done because they need it or you're working together, then that helps deal with those other parts of the project where like your obsessive nature are not going to work.
Yeah.
So that's what I found with myself anyway.
So there's, I listened to a web show called One Fantastic Week.
Yes, I know.
And
We've talked
and
about it a
yeah,
lot.
I know I talk about it all the time. And that's actually what gave me the idea to start this thing. But anyway,
Right.
um in one of the episodes, Pete more anyway, one of the hosts
Yeah.
talks to this younger student, and he says he's trying to give direction on how to know when you're doing things well, and how do you know when you're doing things badly, or when you
Yeah.
don't care? Like, how do you know when you when you care and when you don't? And
Sure.
he, he says, if at any point your excitement wanes, take that as a sign that you've wandered off the critical path. And that has always stuck with me, because when you're really excited about something, it will turn out really good, or it has a much better chance of turning out
Yeah.
really well, especially with like a visual thing like art. I mean, I can see it. I can step back and I can see it. The things that I've really cared about, that I've been excited about, turn out really good, and the things that I don't care about turn out really bad. And so if I start finding myself not caring about what I'm working on, I have to just stop and just step back and think about, how can I do this in a way that I care about?
Hmm.
Is there a way that I can approach this problem uh, with something that I'm interested in? Like, instead of just throwing a generic rock in this, for instance, in this foreground, maybe there's there's something else that's more interesting to me that I can throw in there that will actually add interest instead of just getting me done with the
Right.
project. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I feel like you almost have to kind of learn to work with your obsession and
Yes.
or drive, whatever you want to call it,
It's
and kind of keep it pointed in the right direction and like learn how to work around it when you need to.
You have to be very conscious of what you are very interested in. Like Marie Kondo. Um, if
Yes.
it if it sparks joy, you keep it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't and it's not necessary, then you get rid of it. And actually doing those things uh, is extremely beneficial. It makes you happier. Like, you hold on to all of these extra things because you think that
Hmm.
they belong to you, and you think you should hold on to them, but really you shouldn't. You should let them go. And so if I'm working on a piece and it's not something that I'm super interested in, I should just let it go and try to find a way that I am interested in it. And I think with you, like, if there's something left over in a project that you have to do, but you're not really interested in doing it, then just stop and think, is there a way that you
Yeah.
can do this differently that you would be really interested
Yeah.
in?
That's a good piece of insight. I like that. So basically,
It's just
everything comes down to like hold it, and if it
yeah,
sparks joy.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I absolutely think it does. It's something recently that I've been thinking about a lot.
Yeah.
And so with this whole obsession thing, the bus ticket theory, it's the things that you will be best at are the things that you're most interested in. So stop following the things you're not interested in, or just take a second and see if you can be interested in those
Yeah.
things. Um,
Yeah. I
so
like
I
that.
think that that's kind of a way to direct the obsession aspect of things.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's a good thing to close on.
Okay.
It's a good philosophy.
Okay.
Cool. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's use our obsessions to work for
Okay.
us, I guess.
Let's go collect bus tickets.
Yeah. Honestly, I could see myself doing that. Like I
Collecting
kind of
bus
laugh
tickets.
about it, but I don't know. It's could be kind of
They
cool.
kind of seem interesting now, right?
Yeah, like if I at first I laugh, but if I think about it, like yeah, I could do that. I could see it.
Yeah. Yeah. They would spark some joy.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. See you next week.
Okay. Bye.